Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to look at my blooming Oncidium cherry baby. This Oncidium cherry baby was a rescue, and it's blooming for the very first time under my care. Some people also call this orchid a chocolate orchid, chocolate Oncidium, because of its fragrance is very similar to vanilla/chocolate smell. In addition to this cherry baby, I also have 4 other Oncidium type orchid. As you can see here, they're all grown on the very top of my growing shelf. And the reason for that is I want to ensure that they're getting the maximum sunlight exposure. Or I should say maximum bright light condition, not direct sunshine. And they're grown by a north-facing window. In the summertime, as you can see in the background there, I have the blinds down a little bit, but in the winter time, starting in the fall, I will have the blinds up. And at the bottom of the screen here, you see some numbers. These are the numbers that represent each cup's spikes that I can currently count. So the far end, the farthest one is the cherry baby, and that's the orchid we're going to talk about. But then we also have the red variety, the white variety, the yellow variety, and the one closest to us is actually a cross between White Twinkle and Satuanum. And currently only the last 2 are grown in full water culture, and the other 3 are in semi-hydroponics. This cherry baby was rescued maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's been a while. Last year it did not bloom at all because after I purchased it back, I only paid $5 for it because it was already out of bloom and the orchid nursery was trying to get rid of it, so it was on one of those for sale rack, out of bloom for sale rack for $5. So I paid $5 for it. As soon as I took it home, I decided to give full water culture a try, and that didn't go well, so the orchid was set back. And so after that, after I moved to the southern portion of the United States, I potted it into semi-hydro, and ever since then this orchid took off and grew lots of pseudobulbs and lots of roots, as you just saw earlier. So this is the first rebloom under my care, or actually the first bloom under my care since I rescued it. Currently, you can see in the photo that this is the 3rd spike. For a total of 3 spikes, I think it's doing pretty good for its first blooming cycle under my care. But I think the pity part, or I guess the only thing that's a little disappointing, is the fragrance. It's not as strong as I remembered, and I know that this may have to do with the fact that it's grown indoors, and maybe my ventilation and humidity or temperature is just not ideal. Maybe the flowers aren't as mature for me to sense that strong smell that I remembered from all the cherry babies that I have sniffed at. So this is the only thing that's a little disappointing. Otherwise, just judging by the root system and the way that it's blooming, I think it's definitely on a very good track to full recovery. I'd argue that this is probably not its full potential, but so far, at least it's blooming and it's not just, losing roots or having shriveled pseudobulbs. Let's talk a little bit about the care I give to this orchid. In terms of watering, the cycle in summertime is about 7 days, 7 to 10, but usually more toward the 7-day cycle, because this orchid seems to be pretty thirsty in summertime, and I think it has to do with the fact that it's in a 16-ounce cup, but then it has a very good root system, so I think lots of water just gets soaked up really quickly. But in terms of fertilizers, I always give this orchid quarter strength. In summertime, there were a couple weeks where I decided, okay, I want to give it half strength, 50% recommended dosage. But for the most part, it's just quarter strength. And in winter time, I remember last winter, I was able to go for about 2 weeks without having to re-water this orchid. So the care for this orchid is really simple. I haven't really done a whole lot since I placed it in semi-hydro. So I really consider this type of orchid very low maintenance. In fact, I think Cherry Baby and Oncidium intergenerics are all very easy to get started if you're new to this orchid hobby. They're pretty easy to grow. I know there are certain types that are more finicky, but I'm talking about in general. Cherry Baby, even Oncidium Twinkles, I think are pretty easy to take care of. Now, I know that you can see here some of the leaves have some yellowing tips. That may have to do with sunlight, may have to do with nutrition, but I just haven't really spent a whole lot of time studying and trying to figure out whether I need to up the dosage of, say, calcium or whatever nutrients that they need. I just haven't really focused on that, but I think after this blooming cycle, I will try to see if I need to give it more nutrients more constantly, so that way the leaves wouldn't have that brown tips that I see many Oncidium Twinkles have. But it may also because it simply is just getting in a lot of sun on the very top of my growing rack. For those of you who have more experience with these type of orchids, maybe you can share your experience with us and see, and so we know what the real reason is for the leaf tips to have that brown, dry spots. Soon after I noticed that this orchid was spiking, the speed of its spike was just very quick. I think it's within a month or so, a month and a half, all the buds were pretty plumped and the first flower opened. So this is a very big contrast if you compare this to the speed that Oncidiums grow their orchid spikes. Oncidiums, for example, Oncidium Twinkle is called Christmas Twinkle or Christmas Oncidium in Asia, in Taiwan, because that's when they usually bloom. And for Oncidium Twinkle, my Oncidium Twinkles, they started to spike in mid-May, end of June. And they usually don't start blooming for me until probably November, December time. So it takes them, they'd really take their time growing their spikes. But the wait is worth it, I think, because they're just really charming with a spray of small flowers, and they're fragrant. They're just very cute. I have done a couple of videos on my twinkles from last year, so if you're interested, you can go back to my channel and try to find those videos. But back to this Cherry Baby. The fragrance is like chocolate, and that's why it has a nickname of chocolate orchid, chocolate Oncidium. And it's true, it does smell like chocolate, and it has that vanilla smell as well. And overall, the color is also very pretty. You know, you have that white lip, and the whole flower is more like dark burgundy red / purplish color. It's pretty cute, but I really mostly like its fragrance. This orchid again is not expensive, so if you don't have one and you're interested, you should definitely get yourself one, because I think it's a good starter orchid to have in any collection. Another thing that I'm thinking about doing to this orchid is repotting. After it finished its blooms, I think I'll have to keep an eye out for how many growths it will produce. So I'm not gonna repot it this year. I think I'll wait until next spring to repot. So right now currently it's potted in a 16-ounce cup, so I think I'll up it to 24-ounce or even 32-ounce depending on how many growths that it will produce after this bloom cycle. I really think that this orchid would do better if I put it in a slightly bigger container, and I'm gonna continue to keep it in semi-hydro for sure, because I think this orchid is finally adapted to semi-hydro, or at least a method that has more constant moisture, because before it was potted in bark and sphagnum moss mix, and I tried full water culture, so I guess that was a bit of too much water for its liking, so it wasn't doing well. It lost quite a bit of roots, but ever since I put this into transition this into semi-hydro, it just bounced back nicely. Even though last year it just didn't bloom for me, but you know, look at the flowers now. I think it's well on its full recovery. Anyway, so coming up next is the section of the video where I share with you all the photos I've taken of this orchid's progression. So let's take a look. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!